Welcome back once again to Open Transport Tycoon Deluxe, Episode 3, the third episode. Now, last episode, we hooked up the factory goods, built a bunch of junctions, and today, we're going to hook up some more primary industries, and finally do something with all the goods we've been producing at the Sawmill from the first episode. And to prepare for that, I'm going to build a station over by this town so we can deliver those sawmill goods. And I've got this drop station positioned near the factory. So what we have is the factory producing goods that are dropped over by the sawmill, and the sawmill produces goods that are dropped over by the factory. And that should give us a lot of opportunities to balance traffic through the network as we add more trains. Now we can label the connection, main station hub 3. Now this really is just a split off of the track and then a join, but after we add more lanes later, it'll be a lot more complicated. And now we can start the station that'll pick goods up from the sawmill, and just like with the factory, it's 1-to-1, so every primary train that unloads provides one train full of goods. And just like last episode, we see an industry that's kind of in the way. So once again, I'm going to place an unserviced station nearby to hopefully accelerate its removal from the map. And now we can load this new station up with a bunch of good trains delivering to the new station over by that city. Now I'm going to turn my attention over to this cluster of primary resources. I'll eventually make a station for all of them, but I'm going to start with the forest, seeing as it's our least utilized resource at the moment. And now once again, we have to connect these primary resources to our main line, so I'm going to route them onto a sideline, and then route that onto the main line using another sideline hub. Now this sideline hub eventually gives me a lot of issues later on the road, maybe even into the next episode. It's one thing you have to think about when you're making these is how you're going to expand them in the future when you have to accommodate more traffic. It's hard to balance every facet of making these things, but you really have to think about how upgradable it is or how much you're going to have to move around and shift it to add more lanes and build proper mergers to however many lanes you end up adding. But for now, that's a problem we don't have to deal with yet. And that's another junction down. SLH, Sideline Hub, number 2. And now with that done, I can hook it up to our forest station that we made just a few minutes ago. And don't forget to add trains. Just taking it over to the sawmill that we built in episode 1. And now we can hook up all these farms into 2 stations like we did before. And this is something I kind of glossed over when I made that first farm station in the first episode. Station spreading, I did kind of explain it a bit in that episode, but you can just kind of do something like this where you build a station far away and then control click and merge it with the original station. I do that a few times in this area because there's so many farms. It's a little cheaty for sure, but it really beats building 4 or 5 double stations all trying to fit into one area. Now with the influx of more farm trains, we can go ahead and add a ton of new goods trains. Remember, they're 1-to-1. All those farm trains are now dispersing through the network. You can kind of see whenever I build a station, there's a depot right next to it kind of leading into the station with a weird thing wrapping around. That's called an overflow. I don't think I'd be qualified enough to make a tutorial on those, and I'm not very good at them myself. But just know this design kind of leaks trains into the station one by one until they're kind of evenly dispersed through the network. And then any access trains will get tricked into taking the depot route and get stocked up into the depot. And dispersing them so well kind of gives you a good like an eyeball estimate on how many more trains you can add before the station gets overwhelmed. But it appears the station didn't get overwhelmed. The bridge did. This whole line. We've hit our first backup, our first jam, due to too high throughput through one line. And the jam is attacking what is probably the weakest link in our network. I explained last episode how these bridges have signal gaps, and just the way that the trains will get stacked up on them makes it really hard to unjam. You really have to wait for one train to accelerate from 0, get off the bridge, and then clear the path for the next train to do the same thing. But in the time that that takes to clear up, more trains stock up behind it and make the whole problem a lot worse. And now I kind of take a foolish route here and try to add an extra lane to the bridge, an extra bridge split. Usually this can alleviate it if the bridges are longer, but in this case it really was not the solution. I think the signal gaps here are fine. At first I thought the bridges were the issue, but later on you realize that it's the whole line that's backed up, not just the bridge. And you can really see here that the problem is not the bridge, it's the merge after the bridge into this backbone hub. You can see the trains keep stopping and going as other trains from the other direction are trying to merge into the same line. So what I'm going to do is alleviate the traffic by adding another lane, stretching from that backbone hub there up to the next junction, a little bit north from here. This means we'll have to expand 2 junctions, but the way I've planned the network out kind of lends itself to not having linearly distributed traffic in both directions, and only having to expand one direction of track going one way makes this a lot easier. Now that we can accelerate through time a little bit, you see the jam is slowly clearing up, now that there's 2 lanes going in that direction, and it's gone. Our trains are now flowing nicely. This merger will probably need some work in the future, but it's working pretty good for now. And that wraps it up for today. The end of episode 3, the 3rd episode. Our trains are once again flowing nicely, and this whole section of track ended up looking pretty nice too. Alright, that's it. Everybody out. Bye bye.